The sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Energy in the building, how excited fans were to have a team back in that race, that hunt again. Obviously, I grew up in a basketball house, so I grew up watching KG and Terrell Brandon and Marbury and Gugliotta and all these guys, so it's here. You know what I mean? It's here.
Dude, Austin Rivers, by the way, welcome to the show. Mackey and Judd, you'll notice on the YouTube channel, you see a fourth member of the show here today next to Declan. I wish I had the applause button on my button bar, but technological issues have sunk us this morning. Kye Theige from the Flagrant Howls podcast here to cover Wolves Media Day. So we're going to do a deep dive into, there we go, what Kyle learned at Wolves Media Day, some of the biggest storylines here. But you know what? Austin Rivers understands how to connect with a new team, and he should be used to this by now. Pander to the fans by making local references. Yesterday he referenced KG, he referenced like 90s, early 2000s Timberwolves. He referenced Mighty Ducks and D2 and stuff. So Austin Rivers knows how to connect with a new fan base.
Here's a funny thing about Austin Rivers that I learned overnight. So yeah, he was great talking about Mighty Ducks. When he signed with the team back in July, he said, like, I've always wanted to live in Minneapolis. He wanted to hook up with some of the guys that were on the show. He was drafted back in 2012, 10th overall. That pick was the Hornets pick. That Hornets pick was acquired via the Clippers in the Chris Paul trade. So they sent a bunch of guys to the Hornets. Clippers got Chris Paul, and they got this 10th pick that actually belonged to Minnesota. Well, that Minnesota pick actually was sent 7 years earlier to the Clippers in the infamous Sam Cassell for Marko Jaric trade. So it's 17 years of a deal that ties Sam Cassell to Chris Paul to now Austin Rivers. So 10 years later, the Wolves got their guy. So that's chess, not checkers.
Kevin Bacon, man.
Yeah, that is the Kevin Bacon. Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
That trade, too, I remember hearing about, like, when that trade came across the wire or whatever. I don't even remember how we learned about trades during the Sam Cassell, Marko Jaric era. It wasn't Twitter. But that trade goes down, and at first I heard it as, oh, wow, okay, so the Wolves got Marko Jaric and a first-round pick for Sam Cassell. That's pretty good. And then, 5 minutes later, no, they gave a first-round pick and Sam Cassell to get Marko Jaric, and, worked out very well.
And that's how you get bad for approximately nearly 20 years.
Yeah, do that trade like 6 different times.
Which the Wolves were very capable of doing and did. That's how you get really bad.
But this is probably the most anticipated Wolves season since the end of the Sam Cassell KG era. And so, Kyle, you were at Wolves Media Day. You just take the ball and dribble with it here. What is the biggest thing that stood out to you? Cat wasn't there. Cat had some sort of mysterious illness. And now they're going to have to Photoshop him into all of the video board graphics. But what is the biggest thing that stood out to you yesterday?
Yeah, Cat was out because of there we go. You're good. Okay, there we go. Just learning the ropes here. Cat was out, non-COVID illness. I mean, for all we know, maybe he was just hungover. So he'll be back this week for training camp. I mean, a week from today, it's Tuesday. They have their first preseason game. So as long as it's taking to get here, next week it ramps up. But I was at Media Day last year. Obviously, a much different vibe. Phil, you and I have talked about it. It was 3 or 4 days before last Media Day that they fired Gerson Rosas. So everyone was on pins and needles. They also introduced A-Rod and Mark Laurie. It was just a lot of big fanfare, but also not saying anything. This year, much more relaxed vibe. A lot of the guys last year were worried about kind of contracts. I mean, really, half the team had an expiring contract, or like Carl was up for an extension this summer, D'Lo. But this year, the biggest takeaway, I mean, Rudy said all the right things. He kind of sounds exhausted from Eurobasket, so I think they'll ease him in the next couple weeks.
Judd hates the fact that Rudy Gobert played.
I'm with Judd. I told you that.
I hate international play. If you want to play for your country, that's fine. Then don't take my money. I hate international competition. Anyway, I'm sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
You are anti-American. You hate the Olympics. You hate when we go and beat up on smaller countries.
Play for your team. Anyway, I'm sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
No, so and Ant was there, and he got asked a lot of questions about his situation from a couple weeks ago. And he was, just very much emphasized he was sorry. D'Lo talked about his contract. He seemed in a good spot and said, he made a reference to you go to work to get paid on Friday. So I think he's thinking about that contract extension, but it sounds like he's in good spirits with the team. And then it was just the guys that you maybe never heard of before, but like Eric Paschall, Austin Rivers, we just talked about, Kyle Anderson, Bryn Forbes. You've got a lot of guys that are not only fighting for like a roster spot because they have 20 guys on the roster entering training camp, but not to sound sappy, you've got guys kind of fighting for their careers and like their life. Eric Paschall was drafted by the Warriors, played for them a couple of years. Ironically, his rise to fame was when the Warriors had one bad year and they kind of tanked. But he said he's 25 years old, good, big guy, shoots like 39% from three. And he said he thought about quitting basketball. And he said he was in a really dark place, and Tim Connolly and Dell Demps reached out and kind of, quote unquote, saved his career, saved his life. So I was concerned losing Vando and Pat Bev in the Gobert trade, which we all loved, but that you were going to lose the heart and soul of this team. And what I learned yesterday, at least for now, is that you've got a lot of guys that have a lot of heart and soul and grit that are going to come in and push these guys like Jaden, like Ant, like Carl, and make it not easy on them to just think that they're just going to get 35 minutes a night. You got a lot of grinders on this team. So I think they lost some guys you can't replace, but they did their best to kind of fill that bench with guys who aren't Jake Layman, right? I know Jake Layman just was always telling you he's playing 0 minutes tonight.
That felt like an unnecessary drive-by shot at Jake.
But I know exactly what he said.
Fine.
But I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Like the bench, the 10 through 15 guys are going to be ready to play and want to play because it might be the last chance they get to play in the NBA. So they did a good job filling out the roster. Training camp's going to be competitive because you got guys that believe they should be here. Austin Rivers could have had a lot of other deals, but he took a partially guaranteed deal to come to where D2 was filmed. So
That's awesome. Hey, on Ant, what was your sense of what you saw, and probably most importantly heard too? Because like this is the first time that he has been in the eye of a storm that is negative. And it's one thing to read his quotes, but I feel like there's an observational value to hearing a player, and you can tell when a guy is sincerely remorseful, Kyle, and when he's just like been told, hey, say this to apologize. What was your sense of how the entire thing went down and where he's at mentally? Because until now, it's been a pretty positive experience, and this is probably the first time, and rightfully so, that he's gotten any pushback on anything.
Yeah, this is the first time he's, like you said, Judd, like ever been in trouble, right? Or ever had anything not go his way. I mean, every time he did a Zoom after a game or anything, he was just, everyone loved it. He would trend. It was all positive. I was telling this to Dane Moore last night. I think he's still going through it. I mean, he looked and said all the right things yesterday. He was very sorry. He's very sorry he hurt people. But when pressed on and he said, I'll do whatever I have to do to make this right. But when pressed on can you give us an example? He didn't have one. And to me, again, I love Ant. I reference Ant as like my son. You can have kids, but also be disappointed when they mess up. Your kids are going to mess up. They're going to do things that you aren't proud of. So I think he's still going through it. I don't think he knows how to amend this, how to fix this. And I think that's going to have to come because people aren't going to forget this. Like there's a community of people that are pretty upset by this, and they want to see actions more than just, a statement or a bunch of stories at a media day. So I think he still has some work to do on that. I don't think it's going to cancel him. I don't think it's going to end his tenure here, but he still has work to do on that for sure.
Well, and to kind of loop this back into the who fills the leadership gap left by a Pat Beverly or not that like Pat Beverly and Jared Vanderbilt should be like role models. I don't know them personally, but this was a reminder that Anthony Edwards is still a relatively immature 21-year-old guy or kid, if you want to use that word. Doesn't excuse at all there's what he said, but then there's also the deeper sort of conversation about what his worldview clearly is at age 21. And it's the first time he has stepped in it, like you guys said. But you got to remember when you are the lead, if you want to be the leader of a franchise, you want to be a quarterback of an NFL team, or you want to be, the face of an NHL or NBA team, you aren't just representing yourself and the points that you score in a game or your teammates that you dish assists to. You are representing an organization, a fan base, a community, and you should speak as if you represent and lead all of those people. And, like great quarterbacks understand that. Russell Wilson is a cheeseball, but he understands that I am speaking largely on behalf of everyone here, including fans. And so I don't know if that's something that a lot of 21-year-olds get right away. And I think a lot of 21, 22, 23-year-olds can just kind of get by being immature, and maybe they don't say something that gets captured on camera. He did. And now we sort of know where he's coming from. And so I guess my grand point here is he needs to shore this stuff up and probably get some more life experience before he can be a great leader for the team, the franchise, and the fans and the community.
And I think it's important, too, because a lot of the at Dan5429642s on Twitter that hop into replies that say, like, this isn't a story or whatever, the guys that cover the team, Chris Hine, of the Star Tribune specifically, they did not wake up on week 1 of the NFL just texting all the players being like, what are your thoughts on the LGBTQ community? Ant did this. So this wasn't like a TMZ leaked audio or something. Like, he put this out there, so it is a story because that's the content that he wanted to share. So, again, I just don't think he's ever really publicly messed up. I think he'll get through. I do. I think he'll get through this. I think people will love Ant again, but he still has some work to do on that. And maybe this is his moment. Like I said, it's chicken or egg in the sense of you can't just always be the young guy, but then also be the face of a $1.5 billion franchise. You got to be able to, kind of grow above your years, and he makes a lot of money to represent the franchise, and sooner or later he's going to be the guy on all the billboards, and you want that guy to represent your city, your community, your state, all that stuff.
D'Lo, Dukes, I believe, asked him the question about his contract. Now, what's important to point out is, and this is where I think the whole situation going into the season, Kyle, is intriguing, is, D'Lo in that last playoff game, a rather important game, was benched. Like, he was flat out. He wasn't aching and hurting. He came out. He was benched by Chris Finch. And I know, so he's the type of guy who strikes me character-wise as a guy who, like yesterday is absolutely fine. Like, if things are calm, he's good. Like, and if he's in a good mood, he's good. But where do you think things truly are with a guy going into a contract year, which, by the way, might help, but also a guy who learned, hey, if I'm not pulling my weight, I'm going to be benched. I'm just curious because I've covered guys like this before, and they're always, when things are going well, they say the right thing. I had a great summer. I worked out, blah, blah, blah. But then when things start to trend bad, and they always do at some point because it's sports, that's where you learn a lot more. So what's the overall feeling there for a guy who certainly has reason to play well, but a guy who I think has some problems when things don't go well?
This is probably a lazy comparison, but back to Ant kind of having the first thing go wrong, and maybe that actually changes his whole life trajectory. I could make comparisons to D'Lo too, because D'Lo for most of his life has played in big markets, LA, Brooklyn, Golden State, and been fed the ball and stuff. I think that moment in the playoffs really might have changed him. Again, that might be the optimistic side of me, but you have that moment where on the biggest stage of your career, you get replaced by a guy who was essentially a two-way guy. He also, had a kid just like, I think a couple days ago, and he's 26. And again, I don't have kids. Like, Judd, you can speak on this, but like, I know when Andrew Wiggins, I know someone close to Wiggins, when he had his first kid, it really matured him as a person, right? Like, he knew that, like, I have to keep this kid alive. It's not about video games as much. It's about being a father. So maybe that's just all sappy stuff and he's the same D'Lo. But I do wonder if for a guy that's been thought of as being prickly, he has come out and been like, I love Chris Finch. I love this organization. And that's coming off the heels of probably his lowest point of his professional career in Game 6. So I think he's going to be a good soldier. I think he's being really nice to the media. I think he thinks that no matter what, he's going to get paid. He said it yesterday that the money's in free agency. I'm not concerned about that. That's where you go to get, that's the bank, right? The summer is the bank. That's where you go to collect your money. So I think he knows that this is going to be a big year for him, and that the better he is on the court, but also kind of secretly off the court, the higher that number is going to be, whether it be with Minnesota or with one of the other 29 teams.
Yeah, I think you have a choice to make after that happens. You can get cantankerous and you can misplay your cards and you can think you have more leverage than you do and you can throw a tantrum, which he didn't. And if you do that, you probably cost yourself tens of, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars, because now you're branded. Now you're officially now you're on the outs with another team, whether that's fair or not. But if you can swallow it, take a couple months to be pissed off in the summer alone, I'm sure he was, and then you come back, and this is a great basketball fit for him. I mean, I've kind of gone from at the end of the season when he got benched thinking, maybe you ride it out one more year just to get the cap space in a summer from now. But I was so down on him. His playoff performances have been underwhelming throughout his entire career. But now I'm looking at him saying, boy, this could be a great mutually beneficial 1-year partnership. And if that's all that it is, D'Lo gets the Twin Towers, the target centers to run pick and roll off of. He doesn't have to shoulder the scoring burden at the end of games if he doesn't want to, with Anthony Edwards there. And on the flip side, it's a contract season for the Timberwolves. You might get the best version of D'Lo, just motivated. So this seems like a kind of a great 1-year short-term relationship for both sides, doesn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, and as a reminder, he and Devin Booker of the Suns and Carl all got drafted in the same year. All are represented by the exact same agent. All three of them entered this summer eligible for these max extensions, and Carl got his and Devin Booker got his. So, they're the three amigos. Imagine you, Declan and Judd, if Declan and Judd cashed in this summer for $200 million, and Phil didn't.
I'm telling you yesterday. I'm
a little
good,
resentful. Yeah.
So I mean, those are his friends, but he also sees like, hey, like they might have done it the right way, or they did it this way, and they got paid. So is he maybe secretly pissed off? Yeah, but that's probably what you want. You want a guy that has also, if you go to Basketball Reference, not a lot of 82 game seasons. Maybe this forces him on those nights where he's banged up to be like, you know what, I got to give it a go because I need to have 75 games this year to show that I'm not injury prone. I'm durable. And
I think that's the question is, how do you channel it? Because like if you're ticked off and play well, God bless you. It's dicey because some guys intend to channel it right, but then their true personality overtakes it, and that becomes the problem. So I'm just curious because, to Phil's point, I think that he could be an incredible player. And he at times showed that. But, when things start to go bad for a week or 2 weeks and he starts to go into a funk, does he continue down that road? That's the one thing I don't know, and I can't tell yet. I can't tell.
Hey, before we jump into more observations from Wolves Media Day here, this is a day where a lot of players show up in the best shape of their life. And that's what Judd has done for this basketball season. He has shown up 40 pounds lighter than he was last basketball season. Best shape of your life, Judd.
And that, of course, is thanks to my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I said weight control. I didn't say diet. It's not a quick fix. It's not some short-term plan. It is a plan that will help you lose weight like it did with me. And then, most importantly, keep that weight off. And it works. Dawn down 16 pounds. Chris Ron, our friend from down the hall, down 10 plus pounds. And right now, I want you to join us on a journey that is filled with fulfillment. And your first 8 weeks are free. That is exactly right. And the new Flex plan lets you enjoy the foods that you love. That includes fruit, pasta, and even bread. 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia, LIVEA.com. Join me, join Dawn, join Chris Ron, and so many of the people in our PD family who have lost the weight thanks to Livia.com.
A shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They've been partners with the Timberwolves for a long time as well. So they've gone through all of the roller coaster ride with all of us. You can find them online at federatedinsurance.com, where you can find out all the details about how they help businesses maximize their level of success through risk management tools and resources. You can find a full list of industries that Federated protects. Federated Insurance, where it's our business to protect yours. All right, who showed up in the best shape of their life? Who had the monster offseason? Give us a couple players who are just going to be rocking and rolling physique-wise now.
Well, those are great ad reads. I was thinking yesterday was media day for the Timberwolves, but also for like 25 other teams in the league. And Derrick Rose randomly showed up to Knicks media day in the best shape of his life, and to prove it, he actually showed up shirtless for his media session. So that might be something Judd could do next time for that read.
No, Teg, you have no idea what you're asking. I will not do that I won't do that to you people out there who watch us.
And Ant, again, I know we talked about kind of the off the court stuff, but when he walked into the room yesterday, it's noticeable from 6 feet away. I think John Krasinski wrote about it this morning in The Athletic, but that he gained like 11 pounds without gaining any body fat. And again, I know that's kind of everyone says that, but when you see him, Rudy Gobert is as big as the Eiffel Tower, but I think Ant's arms are like bigger than Gobert's. He looks chiseled, and again, off-court stuff aside, he had he made the playoffs. He played more basketball than ever before. He had a movie. He could have just kind of coasted through this summer, but he looked like he really focused on his game. So he looked great. Naz Reid just continues. Naz Reid is like negative 4% body fat. Like, he is just in great shape.
Same.
And then some of the other guys too. Like, I think the rookies, I thought Josh Minot, I just saw him in Vegas for Summer League. That was a couple months ago. He was so skinny, and you can tell that he's just been constantly working on his body. So they have a really good kind of development with their lifting team and stuff at Mayo Clinic Square. So a lot of guys are in the best shape of their life, but I also think part of that too is like the competition thing. Again, they know that they needed to show up yesterday in shape, because they're not going to have time to do it, because a lot of these guys, half the guys on the team are fighting for minutes in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Phil and Kyle, I'm going to present you a question as training camp starts. The Wolves season will be a disappointment if they don't what? Like, as we start training camp, what do you need from what has been for far too long, often a chronically underachieving franchise?
I need one of three things. I think I want a 50-win season. That's our slogan. That's our bar on Flagrant Howls. All right, we want the Wolves to win 50 games for the first time in 18 years. Mm-hmm. The last time the Wolves won 50 games was the last time the Twins won a playoff game. So we rip on the Twins. Now the Twins, that's a much more embarrassing.
I have tickets tonight. I didn't buy Declan's tickets, but I'm going to.
Yeah. I didn't sell them.
Are you the sucker?
Yeah. No, I got these Delta Suite tickets like a month ago, and honestly, I think they lost every single game since I bought those tickets. I was like, I'm going to go to this game, eat and drink all I can, and just watch them clinch and then so that's on me. I apologize. I might have ruined the Twins season.
Well, it's still, you know what? I will say this about Target Field. It is one of the coolest bars in America. It's a very expensive bar, but it's a cool bar to hang out in. So I either need 50 wins in the regular season, or let's say a top 4 seed. Is there any way that you would win like 49 games and still be the 4 seed? Probably not, but I'd like a really nice regular season and or advance out of the first round of the playoffs. If you can check those boxes or one of those boxes, I would feel pretty good about the step being taken. What about you, Cal?
Well, it's a great question too, because I would say make the playoffs again, and not just the playing game. You have to get through that, but 50 wins, it's so loaded because it's chicken and egg again. Like 50 wins might get you the 6th seed. Like the Western Conference is so loaded. So I think if they win 50 games, that would be it for me. I wouldn't care about anything else, because if you win 50 games, you're not going to be a play-in team. That's almost impossible. But yeah, to Phil's point, like if it's not this year, because one of the messages coming out yesterday, at least from Tim Connolly or from Chris Finch, was like, and this makes sense a little bit. You don't want to hear it, but like it's going to take some patience, right? Like D'Angelo Russell was asked, how is it going to be running pick and rolls with Rudy Gobert? He's like, I have no idea. I've never been on the same court with him. So there's going to be some growing pains. You see it in football. Like they need to get some reps together. But so this might start slower than we all hope. But 50 games and or just making it through a good playoff series. I think you could say it's a win this year if they went 7 games in the playoffs and maybe lost to like the Suns, but had all this momentum that next year they make it to the Western Conference Finals. But anything less than that is an absolute disaster. Like if they go 41-41, that is an absolute disaster. Might still get them in the play-in game, but that would be 50 wins is probably the easiest, safest answer to Judd's question.
Yeah, and some of this is obviously injuries pending, but then I would say too that they have enough talent on this team where I think if Gobert goes down, that's probably the biggest loss, because he's just going to be the anchor that keeps your defense in check. But like you can withstand some level of injuries and still flirt with or win 50 games here. So, if Cat goes down for like 70 games, okay, let's reevaluate that take. But think about this. Utah was winning 50 games on a fairly regular basis with I don't know about far inferior, but an inferior roster to what the Wolves are going to put out there this year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and ironically, going back to D'Lo, if Rudy's out for 15 games, you just kind of slide your all NBA center back to where he used to play center, right? And just kind of fill in the gaps. If Jaden McDaniels misses time, you have Taurean Prince, Kyle Anderson, all these guys. If Ant was missing 10 games, Jalen Noel, Bryn Forbes, all these guys, there's not a lot behind D'Lo. So again, you're going to need him to play 70 games minimum. I know we all love Jordan McLaughlin, but if you look at Phil, we talked about the top 22 point guards. The 22nd point guard was De'Aaron Fox. Every night Jordan McLaughlin starts for the Timberwolves, he's going to be behind the 8 ball of a major underdog against whoever he's guarding. So you need D'Lo to play a lot of games if this team is going to sniff 50 wins for, as you said, the first time in almost 2 decades.
Yeah, that's another funny one where Jordan McLaughlin rolls off a few good games at the end of the year, and we sit here and maybe he should be the starting point guard. Let's pump the brakes. He's 15, 20-minute doses of J-Mac, I think is plenty.
He told us yesterday he got married in Hawaii this summer, so shout out to him. Those are what smart people do, like him and I. But also he graduated with a master's in communications management degree from USC, so he might be in Declan's chair one day. He wants to stay in sports. He wants to cover sports. He wants to be in the media. So he's a really interesting young guy. He always has a chip on his shoulder. He got a little contract last year, but this is the second and final guaranteed year of it. So just kind of, reiterate a lot of these guys are fighting for their lives out there on the court, and it should help kind of foster growth and competitiveness and all that stuff that you want, and Finch just loves.
Yeah. Judd, do you have any final Timberwolves questions here before we say goodbye to Kyle and then say hello to him on Flagrant Howls again later this week?
I got one more. X's and O's basketball. So I think the perception, rightfully so, is that the offensive integration of Towns and Gobert is going to be fun to watch. It might take some time. But I have a defensive question. How is this going to work? Considering the Wolves played, basically that they would defensively meet teams on the perimeter last year because of how they basically are structured and the type of players that they had. Gobert is far more of an interior guy, and a traditionalist, I guess, defensively. How does the relationship with Towns and Gobert work with Gobert now being put into a role that doesn't fit what Finch did defensively last year? That's my X's and O's.
That's a good question. You saw Rudy Gobert play in Euro basketball, and they switched a lot. So all of a sudden you have this 7'6" guy out on the perimeter trying to guard guys. That's a disaster. You're not just going to switch everything. You do want Rudy around the rim. But I do think if you go back and look at Phil said, the Jazz have won 50 games every year with less talent on those rosters than what the Wolves have. And he had very little defense in front of him, right? So if he was kind of your free safety, he had really no defensive linemen, cornerbacks, anything. He was just Darren Sharper back there by himself. So
I love Kyle taking this and speaking football language to Judd right now. This is a great way.
Darren Sharper might not be the best name to bring up for players, but
human being wise.
Edit that one out. But no, so I just think that I think that putting I know we kind of bash on D'Lo a little bit, but he's a much better defender than Mike Conley. Mike Conley was a corpse. Donovan Mitchell was just literally would bring you a Uber from the perimeter to the lane. So I think having Ant and Jaden out there, it remains to be seen how Karl will be able to defend a little more on the perimeter, but they're going to want to keep Rudy around the rim. All of his former teammates yesterday, when they're what do you think of when you think of Rudy Gobert? They're blocks. So you want to have that guy protecting the rim because also getting defensive rebounds. So I think the fact that they have Ant and Jaden kind of on the wings rather than Mitchell and I don't know, Joe Ingles or something should help a lot. And it's not just going to be a turnstile to let guys into the lane. But yeah, I don't think Finch knows either. I think that's why it's you got to get Rudy these reps, but balance the whole he's exhausted from playing in Eurobasket. So it's going to be tough to kind of figure out because offensively, he's maybe the fifth option, but defensively, he is everything. He is why you paid all those picks, all that money. He is everything for them on defense, and you have to get him in there to play with these guys in the preseason so that it's not just game one. It's who's the tall 7'2" guy from France.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that too, and that I think there's a lot of chatter about. Well, when you have Gobert, what about these other leaks that could spring, right? What if the other team plays small ball? The Timberwolves are betting that the leaks that they already had, which were huge leaks, rebounding, and blocking shots and rim protection. They're betting that Rudy Gobert covering those leaks is a greater benefit to the team than any other leaks that might spring because you have Rudy Gobert, in part because, like Kyle said, you have a better cast of perimeter defenders than Utah did the last few years. So there's going to be some leaks, but they're betting that there's going to be fewer leaks with Rudy Gobert.
And if you're listening to this and, you're like, oh, doesn't everyone just go small? Like, I watched the Warriors play. Aren't they just have 5 guards out there? Chris Finch said it yesterday with, pride. He was like, when they go small, we'll go big. And that's why this is an experiment, but also, too, it's not just going to be small ball for the rest of time. You might be seeing the Wolves be one. I mean, Cleveland's doing it, too, with, Jared Allen and Mobley and just having all these guys that are super tall. This might be the next wave of things. It's like, hey, we're just going to get all the defensive rebounds. We're going to protect the rim. And then when our 7'2" center gets the ball, he's going to outlet it to Jaden or Ant, and they're just going to take off, and we're going to get a ton of fast break points. So it's going to be interesting. I don't trust anyone other than Chris Finch to make it work. I think he's hyped about having real big guys. He's made it work before in Europe with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis. He needs to be a wizard to make this work, and I believe that he can.
Awesome. There it is. If you want more of that, if you want more D2 references and breakdowns too, Flagrant Howls is your Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. You can find it on the Score North YouTube channel, the Mackey and Judd podcast feed, and also on its own Flagrant Howls podcast feed. So, all right, Kyle, thanks for coming in, dude. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Great stuff, man.
Great stuff. Let's pause here. We got to get to our friend Randy in Cottage Grove for a Week 3 Vikings stud stable on Mackey and Judd.